To order, roll call please.
Commissioner Capitan?
Here.
Commissioner Peterson?
I'm under my desk, but I'm here.
Commissioner Steen?
Here.
Commissioner Sherling? Here. Commissioner Breitling?
Yes, here.
You're all here. Taylor, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Taylor. With that, we move on to minutes of the previous meeting. Any comments, questions, or a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
And a second. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Minutes are approved. On to order of the agenda. I am going to request one change to the order of the agenda in recognition of our friends in the audience. Today we have the triple RDC review, JPA reviewed on item number 7. I'd like to see that move to number 2.
So moved. Second.
A second. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Order of the agenda has been approved as amended. Approve the consent agenda. Any discussion on the consent agenda? Questions? Or a motion? Commissioner Shirley,
Move to approve the consent agenda.
is there a second? Second. And a second. Any discussion on the motion? Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Breitling?
Yes.
Commissioner Peterson?
Yes.
Commissioner Steen?
Yes.
Commissioner Capitan?
Yes.
Commissioner Sherling? Yes.
Agenda has been approved. On to public comment. We're at the stage in the meeting where anybody who's not on the agenda who would like to, and we'll get to Clay County, by the way, so you're excluded from this, who'd like to address the commission, step forward to the podium at this point in time. Seeing none, I don't see anybody online. All right, public comment is closed. Moving on to the regular agenda, Fargo Cass Public Health Agreement. Mr. Wilson and Ms. Fleming are here, so I'm not sure, Mr. Wilson, how you want to do this, but take it away.
Sure, I'll kick it off and then turn over to Ms. Fleming fairly quickly. Mr. Chair, members of the board, thank you. I was approached by Ms. Fleming with Fargo Cass Public Health a couple of weeks ago, really looking to update the contract between Fargo Cass Public Health and Cass County, effective as this board considers and may take action to approve the updated language. There would be no financial impact to the county in 2023. We have approved budget agreements for 2023 as far as as part of our budgeting process. So there would not be any impact there. Potentially would be an impact in 24, although I don't think there's an understanding of what that would be at this point. In speaking with Ms. Fleming, it really looks like, and I understand the intent to simply be to better reflect the services that are actually being provided at this point. And it's a little more precise, includes a few more of the services that are taking a greater and greater amount of their time as a division. Obviously, they are a department of city government, but we also have a contract with them, and they provide public health services in rural parts of Cass County. And so there's a portion of these services, as Chair Steen, you and I talked, a portion of those services that certainly are provided within the city of Fargo, but there's also a portion that is within city of West Fargo and some in the city of West Fargo as well. Proportions may be up for debate. I don't know that we have those precise numbers at this point, but again, the intent as it's been presented to me, and you've got Ms. Fleming on the line that would be able to speak to that momentarily, is really just to represent more accurately than the current agreement is of what the current services provided are. And again, as we talked, we are not looking for commission action today. This is understanding that this would be an item of interest to the board. There's probably some interest in hearing about the updated language, having a chance to read through it. The thought was that we may discuss this today and potentially bring it back for potential action at our next meeting, first meeting of November.
Ms. Fleming, what I'd like to do is give you an opportunity first to identify any significant changes that you're noticed on the proposed contract, and then after you've been able to do that, open it up for any discussions by our commission members. All right?
Sure. Yep. Good afternoon, commissioners. Really, like Robert had said, the purpose of this, when I started in 2018 in this role, we did a Cass County agreement update shortly after that because historically the county agreement has been a little bit not quite as detailed as I guess I like things. And so that's really what this is about as well. And the last contract we did in 2018, I don't believe that, I'm not sure if that went through the city attorney's office, but there was also some language in it this time that our city attorney wanted to be in more legal language. And so and I believe one of the references was not correct to the state code. And so she just did some updating from the language standpoint. From my standpoint, the biggest change that I did was just to add in those harm reduction services that are, basically new to our area. And so not from a financial standpoint to add, but just so that everyone is aware that although a lot of those happen within the city of Fargo, they impact the health of our entire community. And so I wanted that noted on the contract that those services are happening in our area. And sometimes, we can have other counties, we can have way out in our county, we can have West Fargo, people that utilize the Harm Reduction Center, all of those things. So I just wanted noted in the contract. The other thing is knowing that there is the opioid litigation money that is potentially coming, and the county has also expressed some interest in having that money come through us for mitigation. That was kind of the other reason of having that noted in the current contract, if in the case that the county does choose to put those funds to work cooperatively with the city of Fargo.
Anything else? Anything else? Oh, okay. Questions from the commission. Commissioner Breitling.
The first is a comment.
Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can. I'll listen closely.
Not close to your mic, Dwayne.
The first is a comment. In quickly reviewing the document, it makes reference that notices be sent to the Director of Cass County Services, and that's inappropriate now. We have a zone director, and that should be changed accordingly.
Yes, and so Robert did identify there was a change that they wanted on that. I think there was also some that the jail wanted some language changes. So those are all going to be updates that will be put in by the county before they would send it back if you agree to those other changes.
The others are simply questions I have of the state's attorney's office. And that's, have we ever, as a county, established a health zone? Can you provide us a response for our next meeting?
Commissioner Breitling, Mr. Chair, I don't have a good answer to that. I will investigate an answer to that.
And if we haven't, have we made advantage or taken advantage of 233505, which has it's a statute that provides the county the ability to request of a city to be included in their district? We need to have a response to that as well. The third question I have is really a comment. Section 243502 indicates that each tract of land has to be included within a health district within the state. And that says 2001. What has this county done to be included in a health district, if anything? If all of these answers are, we haven't done anything, then it seems to me that what we need is some type of joint powers agreement rather than a contract for services. And that would have dramatically different detail in it. But these are questions that I need to have answered before we can vote at the next meeting.
Mr. Burdick, have you gotten all those down?
I've got it.
Commissioner Peterson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Fleming and Mr. Wilson, you recall a conversation we had regarding this. I see Desi nodding. I'm not sure now is the time to jump into what we discussed previously, because there's a lot of dynamics, so maybe simply working with Mr. Wilson or Mr. Burdick. So I'll summarize this as best I can. There's quite a bit of dynamic that could potentially transpire regarding the involvement of our friends in West Fargo. And the fact, Desi, you know this better than I, so please interrupt me if I get this wrong. Our friends in West Fargo previously paid, and for whatever reason, a good commissioner friend of mine made a motion that passed to withdraw themselves from participating in this. So our friends in Fargo, when I say, so the city commission, I should just say the city commission. The city commission in Fargo obviously acknowledges there's a value to Ms. Fleming and team. The city of West Fargo thinks they pay through the county. And it's not proportional, needless to say. So I'm going to stop there before I get way too political and way too much above my realm of understanding. And I don't know if Ms. Fleming wants to comment on this better, or you can feel free to say, let's work this out as a good explanation for Commissioner Breitling. So Desi?
Ms.
Right,
Fleming,
so I
feel free to
think,
pass if you'd care to.
Oops, I'm sorry.
Feel
So,
free to pass if you care to
going
pass.
back to 1976, when the city established their first agreement with the county then for the city being willing to take over have the public health services for the city as well as the county. So if the city at some point would say, like, we don't want to do a health department anymore, the county would be required to provide those services. But because the city of Fargo is willing to have the health department in their portfolio, then the county does not have to. And that's why this agreement is in place. If that makes sense.
Yep. I'm just going to jump in with one thought and then we can leave this. I'm assuming that the county has the authority to issue or to create a health district, which is for taxing purposes. But I think, and at the same time, they'd also have the authority then to contract with the city of Fargo to provide those services. Correct?
Yes.
All right, thank you. All right, anything on this agreement other than that issue for Ms. Fleming? Okay, Commissioner Sherling.
Just one quick question. I noticed that there's no fiscal impact that's noted here, and I would just, ask if there's any information forthcoming on that. It would be great to have that. Thanks.
Ms. Fleming?
Yeah, I think, you guys always have the last say in whether you pass a budget or don't pass a budget. It's not our intent to, that's not the reason behind doing the contract. That's really just for clarity. The West Fargo discussion obviously is one that could be had for you guys if you wanted to. They are growing. I know our environmental services could potentially need to increase in West Fargo due to, them adding different ordinances. They kind of mirror what Fargo does sometimes, and which is fine, but our environmental health cover everything or almost everything in West Fargo that we do in Fargo, and that we get license fees back from West Fargo based on a separate contract, but there is no money that is supporting staff. And so some of those things, coming up in the future, obviously will be, budget increases for the city of Fargo. And so those kinds of things we would, have to present. But as far as just this contract and the harm reduction and all that, really, that was just to get that on so that you all know those programs are here and what's available. And like I said, with the mitigation monies coming down, I just thought it was appropriate to add that into the contract.
Thank you.
Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I think this, Ms. Fleming addressed this prior, but just in case, I'm presuming Mr. Wilson, our team, has had a chance to review this, and by that I mean all the people that are impacted. So I heard you say the jail, all the folks that are involved. So that was my main question. I'm not an expert in what Ms. Fleming does or what the team in the jail or surrounding departments do. So yeah, if they've reviewed it, and I don't see any objections noted in our report. I saw your letter and I saw I read through it as well, but
This is, I shared this with Captain Frobig in the jail and Bob Henderson, because there was a reference early on to potential improvements to sort of how we handle medical records in the jail as well. And so I think we've got kind of all eyes looking at this and have some ideas of how we would want to look at it, and maybe some a potential sub-agreement as well. But again, didn't get the update of the current reference to the human service zone, and then one other reference that Captain Frobig requested. Those will be in there for the next meeting, realizing that this was going to be a discussion at this point.
And in the future, we might want to consider, having a separate contract for the jail. When we, with the school system, when we have our contract for the general school nursing, we do a separate contract, and then the special ed is a separate contract as well, which is similar to the jail because that's paid like 100% by the school. And so with the jail, that's 100% their cost. So it might make some sense to do a separate contract at some point just to detail more of those services.
Any other questions? I have two questions for you, Desi. These are just service issues. On page 2 of the contract, B, there's a home health aid qualified service provider provision. Do you provide much assistance to the county human services department for that? I mean, are we actually involved?
So we have clients out in the county that we see.
Yes.
So whether that would be for home care or, assisted, like basic service needs, bathing, light housekeeping, that kind of thing. So those are West Fargo and countywide that we see clients.
Okay. So throughout the county?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then the other question I have is on page 6. And this is not meant to jump on anything previously brought up in the community, but I'm just curious if you would not mind bringing something to the next meeting for us or providing to us with regard to item E.
Sure.
What's the cost of that new? Because that's a new service in the city, at least that we're going to be looking for in the contract. I'm just curious what the cost of that is that the county will be picking up. If you can come up with something within the next couple of weeks.
Okay. And like I said, I don't think at this point there is a plan to put any of that towards the county. Again, it's just kind of to let you know it's there and happening.
Yep,
But
okay,
we
that's fine.
can
All right. Any
certainly
other
have
questions
something.
for Desi? Hearing none, thank you, Desi, for showing up, and we'll see you hopefully in a few weeks or whenever our next meeting is.
Okay. Thank you.
thank you, Desi. Make sure your team knows we're grateful for them.
Thanks, Jad.
I'm going to ask for the commission's forgiveness on this next one. I did move number 7 to number 2, but Captain Frobig is here with something that's probably going to take us 5 minutes.
Yeah, with that.
Are you okay if we entertain number 3 before number 2 on the agenda? Good. Mr. Frobig, Captain Frobig, if you wouldn't mind, and we'll talk to item number 3, the new item number 3 on the agenda, which is the jail body scanner maintenance agreement. You missed this, that's what I'm getting at, because we changed the agenda before you came in. So if you wouldn't mind, just come back, we'll address that. The county body, right now,
Okay, so I have second like the original.
county body scanner.
I'm confused, I'm sorry. All right, for those online, my name is Andrew Frobig, I am the jail administrator. You have before you two proposals for an ongoing maintenance agreement for our jail's body scanner. One is, they're all for the same rate. One is to renew for 1 year, the other is to renew for 3 years at the existing rate. I have no idea if the cost might go up if we only go with a 1-year renewal. So I'm just presenting both as options.
Commissioner Brightling,
What is the current contract cost?
So it is actually at the exact same rate right now. I think it's 13,000 a year, paid in quarterly installments. It's unfortunately when the body scanner was installed and we had to take on the maintenance agreement after the initial install, it doesn't line up exactly with our budget year. So we budgeted for that 13,000 a year right now, knowing that the one contract is expiring this month, and then we have to pay the first quarter of the next annual installment in this budget year. So it is in the budget to pay that first quarter for this year, and everything is included in
There's no increase.
there's no increase at all.
any other questions, Captain Frobig? Or a motion?
Move to
Wait.
approve.
Hold on a
I'm
second.
sorry.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
Move to approve.
Second.
Any discussion on the motion?
Which one are you?
Which one?
Question.
1 or 3? 1 year or 3?
That's a really good point. I just assumed it would be a 3, I'm sorry. Move to
Given-
approve the
given-
1 or the 3 year.
The one, because it's the same as what we've had
But
before.
the 3 years is the same as well for 3 years. So I'm thinking there'd be support for the 3-year contract, Commissioner.
I'm not going to
Brightling.
argue with that.
Okay, well, you can make your proposal.
For 3.
Okay.
Second.
All right, there's a second for 3. Any discussion other than that what you just had? Commissioner Peterson?
Good call.
Thank you. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Sherling?
Yes.
Commissioner Brightling?
Yes.
Commissioner Peterson?
Yes.
Commissioner Steen?
Yes.
Commissioner Capitan?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes.
you.
Thanks, Captain Provig. Now we are on to item number 2 on the agenda, which is the triple RDC JPA review. Mr. Wilson, are you prepared to go over all of this?
Mr. Chair, members of the board, I am. I may be a bit long-winded in this, as it's a fairly extensive explanation that we'll get into. Before I do that, absolutely want to recognize the number of guests that we have that are going to speak to this. We've got Eric Johnson representing the city of Fargo, who has helped enormously, has taken the lead in drafting this JPA we're discussing today. We've got Clay County Commissioners Kevin Campbell and Dave Emiger, and Steve Larson, County Administrator from Clay County. And all of these folks have been very helpful and very responsive as we've worked through the draft and trading language back and forth, and really has been a pleasure to work to get to this point, even though it's we've been on a kind of a bit of a journey to get to this point. So again, the goal today is to brief you on what we've developed as a draft JPA for the 5-member entities of the Red River Regional Dispatch Center. There's obviously a number of things that are in play here. One of the things that's maybe taken as much of the attention as others is the effort to build a new facility. Concurrent with that, we've been looking at the governance structure and updating that governance structure, which is what we're looking at today, and also a land lease to potentially locate that new facility on land owned by Sanford Health east of the new hospital. New hospital relative term at this point. So I'm just going to walk through the briefing memo that kind of hits the highlights of the updated draft JPA, unless there are requests to go about it in a different manner. Okay. Really, this review has included policy, public safety, legal, administrative leaders from all 5 entities that are members of the triple RDC, Fargo, West Fargo, Moorhead, Cass, and Clay counties. We are looking to update this, and to approve it would take individual votes at by the governing boards of each of those organizations. The key change or difference is right now the representative from each organization on the kind of governing level body they are the chiefs and sheriffs from each of the police departments and sheriff's offices. And early on in this process, there was a recognition that the policy leaders would like to have more of the control, understanding, and impact on the financial end of developing the budget, while leaving the public safety decisions to public safety folks. And so striking that balance, I think, is really where some of the ongoing discussions really got into a pretty granular detail and took some time to hammer out. What we are looking at is an authority board that consists of 10 members, two elected policy members from each of the 5 member entities. The board chair rotates annually, and the vice chair must not be from the same state. There are certain board actions, including approval of the annual budget and hiring the director, that require an affirmative vote of a North Dakota and a Minnesota member. Other actions, including altering the financial structure of design and construction of the new dispatch center, require an affirmative vote of 1 Cass County member. And then there will also be a number of committees that report. 2 committees report to the authority board: Budget and Finance Committee and an Executive Committee. And the Budget and Finance Committee really, upon getting input from the staff, from the director, makes a recommendation of the yearly budget. And then separate committee, the Executive Committee, that Budget and Finance Committee, I should say, is made up of 10 members, 2 representatives each from each of the organization, one being the organization's finance director or budget director, however they title that position. And then the other committee is the Executive Committee, really public safety focused. 10 members, 2 members from each organization, 1 from a police department, 1 from a fire department of each of the cities, and then 2 members of each county. At least 1 is the sheriff or their representative. And then reporting to the Executive Committee, you have the current committees that are in place in the RRDC structure. And I think that was part of the key, is as we got into some of these discussions, heard from a number of the law enforcement folks who said, as far as the governance or reporting up of the particular law enforcement related elements that come up and have to be dealt with, so our structure there works well. Don't mess with it if it's not broken. And so the committees that report to the Executive Committee, you've got the Law Enforcement Committee, a Fire EMS Operations Committee, Radio Communications Committee, and a Personnel Committee. And within that structure, that's where really the decision making for this JPA, this group, will be made. They've got input from all members, with finance and policy folks having the policy level budget input, and public safety folks having the public safety input. Annual budgets will be prepared and submitted by August 1st of each year. Cass County would serve as the fiscal agent. We do have a note in here that North Dakota, Minnesota entities may enter into separate agreements to finance portion of the design and construction of the anticipated new facility. Obviously intertwined with this, again, the governing document, we've had fairly extensive conversations about the new facility. And one of the elements of those discussions is that from the Cass County perspective, you as a board have made it clear that really reflective of the operations budget, where you are responsible for the operations budget of Triple RDC on the North Dakota side. You do that because you have the taxing base that includes both the cities of West Fargo and Fargo, and you don't want to tax the residents of Fargo or West Fargo. And so in your 2023 building fund budget, you allocated $10 million for the construction of this. So you've got $10 million there. We have also had conversations with our friends across the river between Clay County and Moorhead collectively. They have agreed to contribute up to $2.5 million, or 25% of the cost of that facility. So it would, lost my train of thought, jumping back to my memo here. Potentially, the North Dakota entities and the Minnesota entities internally could enter into separate agreements regarding those amounts of money. Cost share splits, other than construction cost, are based on the population of each member entity and will be reviewed every 3 years to ensure that fair and equitable financial responsibility is maintained. Obviously, we don't all grow at the same rate, and so rather than currently have looked at those on the 10-year census, and this has the opportunity to look at that every 3 years. And the city of Fargo has in the past acted as a human resources agent for Triple RDC, and that will continue. Got some more information there. I'll pause to ask if there are any questions, or if you want to jump in with any comments.
If we would, I would just, Robert, why don't we go through the whole thing
Yep.
first, and then we can pause. I don't want to pause in the middle and then get derailed and
Yep. Okay.
finish. That'd be great.
Very, very good. Obviously, again, governance and operations, JPA is one element. Intertwined with that is the need for the new facility, and as we've been working on the agreement, we've also been looking at the need for that facility. That is, the need is recognized by all partners. The current facility is undersized. It's not in a ideal location, and that it's agreed that all member entities should consider adoption of an updated JPA with an understanding that a separate agreement may be needed for the construction of the new facility when the final size, design, and cost of that facility is finalized. We think we're close to that, but we are not. We're not 100% there just yet.
I just want to reemphasize, adopting the JPA is a governance document, not a construction document. By adopting the JPA, it does not authorize any type of construction or engagement in any type of agreement at this point. That'll be a separate decision agreed to by each of the entities and approved by the JPA board.
Yep. Again, as separate but concurrent to this, all of the entities have been meeting and reviewing plans and discussing square footage and layout of what is that facility going to look like. I think we're close to getting a rendering there. Spoke with the principal architect the end of last week, and I think we may have an update as early as our first meeting in November, maybe the second meeting in November. That would be get to schematic design and potentially a cost estimate. As we have up to this point, Cass County will continue to coordinate facility design, site selection, and construction of the facility in coordination with our fellow members. Cass County will be responsible for the North Dakota portion of design and construction cost. City of Moorhead and Clay County will contribute 25% of the construction cost, up to $2.5 million for the new facility. This agreement will be shared between Moorhead and Clay on a 40-60 split. And we are continuing to work with Sanford Health to locate the dispatch center on Sanford property to the east of their hospital. And that conversation has moved forward within the last couple of weeks. I think we're talking general terms that appear to be agreeable to parties at this point, but we're waiting to see that reduced to print and drafts that we can circulate among member entities to really get some feedback and share drafts. Very much just appreciate the collaboration and the partnership among the entities. Five entities working across a state border. I think at some point early in the process, we discovered this may be the only one of its kind in the country, that you've got cross state borders sharing a dispatch center. It's probably created a few additional wrinkles that we've needed to solve, and it might have added a bit to the timeline as we've been working through this, but I think we're in really good shape, and I think what you're reviewing today, potentially acting on at your next meeting, is testament to the work that all parties have put in.
Before we move into questions, I'm going to invite our friends from Minnesota to stop up. They want to say anything to the project or have any comments or any complaints. You guys are way too nice now.
We're here to support what's currently before you.
Okay, perfect. All right, anything else? We've been through a lot of discussion with Clay County, with Moorhead, not so much with Fargo and West Fargo. I think they're pretty confident in what's going on. But I know that all the input from these gentlemen here and Eric, like I said, putting the whole thing together, listening to our concerns and our desires and wishes, that has worked really well. So with that, nothing else coming up from them. Questions from the commission, Commissioner Brightly.
I have an inquiry, really. At the last publication of the North Dakota Association of Counties indicated that the state system in North Dakota for this type of service is going to be visual as well as vocal. Is that to be included in what we're projecting for a new facility to be consistent with the state?
I have no clue what you're talking about, Commissioner Brightly, but maybe somebody will enlighten us.
I believe what you may be referring to is either the ability to text in pictures from an emergency situation or video, something like that.
My understanding is that it's video.
Okay.
Call it.
Oh, I don't know who would be able to do that, but I think we'll probably pursue that when we have the design.
One of the,
I was just overheard, I figured I might be able to input. What was your exact question?
Come on up to the podium, introduce yourself, Robert. Robert's our Director of IT.
Yep, so what was your exact question, Commissioner Bratland?
Yeah, I read in the last publication of the North Dakota Counties Association Bulletin that the state facility for this service is going to be visual as well.
There haven't,
Is that,
the visual is currently in a beta testing format where they're not ready to roll out to a larger scale populace. Triple RDC, I have a huge amount of respect for waiting for things to be tested and validated before having anything become anywhere near our constituency and citizens. So I have full faith in Amanda and Brian and Mary over there to make sure that whatever offerings we do are there to serve our citizens in their worst possible times.
would there be a requirement in the construction contract to accommodate improvements like that?
With the current triple RDC environments, they are equipped almost like little battle stations when you look. If you've never seen their facilities, I strongly recommend it, but they each have roughly 6 screens physically in front of them. With any of these construction projects, equipment areas will need to be provided for the IT side as well as the radio side, and that would be taken into consideration with anything like that here.
I'm curious about it. That's more than anything else.
Dave? Introduce yourself and
He's got his sheriff hat on. I didn't say that out loud. Oh, my mic's on, sorry. I'll mute that.
Oval badge. I'm David Ebbinger. I'm Clay County Commissioner. For 12 years, I was Chief of Police Moorhead and worked with the Triple RDC. One of the major accomplishments that benefited North Dakota that we managed to do as part of our partnership over the years was the ARMOR system is the backbone radio system that the state of Minnesota uses. It is moving into next generation 911, and it is got an interoperability with the entire state. And when I say state, that includes Cass County. That is about, this is not being critical of North Dakota, because North Dakota is on par with many, many states. But the Minnesota system is about 20 years ahead of what's being done now. And I have full faith that North Dakota is going to be able to meet the requirements that are being set forward for next generation 911 within 10 years. I mean, I think that's reasonable to say. They are beta testing a lot of things. Right now, as the technology is installed and as the local jurisdictions can afford it, Next Gen 911 will include texting. And texting is in place in a lot of areas right now. And it very well may include the ability to send video or still pictures over a complaint received by the dispatch center. And in relation to that, send those things out to responding first responders. But this is something that is just now coming into use in the state of Minnesota and Cass County. And from what I'm hearing, it's probably being beta tested in a limited area. And I know they have I believe it's between Fargo and Jamestown, I believe. I've had a conversation that they've got a test system in North Dakota to work on.
Thank you.
Commissioner Sherling.
Thank you. And I would just add that the architects that have been working on this project specialize in these types of facilities and have several examples of similar facilities across the country. And IT was a big part of the planning of putting that together.
Commissioner Capitan.
That's a question that I have is, where is the architectural design at now? Are we getting close to construction documents?
We are, and this hit a little bit of a pause because we weren't sure what exactly the relationship with Sanford was going to be. That has firmed up in probably the last couple of weeks, and so that allowed our architects to move forward. They're in the process right now from moving from a bubble diagram schematic where you basically have bubbles that are setting up rooms to getting down to a more precise, not yet construction documents, but more precise layout of different areas, square footage requirements. And with that, they're going to be able to give us some estimated cost.
Robert, you kind of addressed that just a little
Yeah.
bit ago about the time frame we're looking at right now.
As of the last conversation I had with that architect the end of last week, they expect to have a report with that first phase done about a week from now. So I would expect either at that first November meeting, potentially at the second November meeting, we should have that rough schematic, more refined from the bubble diagram, but still not quite to construction document level, with a cost estimate. And then that would roll over into developing the actual construction documents.
Thank you. And I just want to be real cautious here that we keep on task This is not about the construction of the facility. This is a JPA with our friends in Minnesota and Fargo and West Fargo. I just want to thank Clay County Commissioners. This need has been recognized for years that we would need to expand and be able to, promptly answer the phone when somebody calls us. And, if it wasn't for, the great working relationship we have across the river, we probably wouldn't be as far as we are now. So I just really want to thank both Commissioners Campbell and Eberling
And Steve.
and Steve and Robert for working with Commissioner Steen and I on getting this to this point. It's been really, really crucial. So we've got it launched. What we recognized early on is that we needed, before we could go on to construction, we needed to get this agreement, this joint powers agreement put together. And we've had other agreements before, so it's not our first rodeo. And have had a great working relationship with Clay County in the past. So we're looking forward to getting this done, and then we can move on to the details of the construction contract. And of course, Minnesota has different ways of financing things than we do in North Dakota. So what they do over there will be unique to what we do on this side of the river. But we haven't had a whole lot of input from the cities of Fargo and West Fargo because they're not signing the check. But certainly from the level of fire chiefs and police, they will be very, very engaged. And they have been very engaged in the makeup of this JPA as well. So we're looking forward to moving on with this. But I just want to make sure that we don't get bogged down in any kind of details on what this facility is going to look like in the end.
Chief Dirksen from the Fargo
Yes.
Fire Department was our main contact with the city of Fargo. He's been very involved with all of this.
Yes, he
Carries
has.
the word back and forth to.
Again, one last point that I would make to our board is I sent out what was at the time the most recent draft of the JPA on Thursday afternoon, Friday morning. Since then, Steve and I had one more conversation, and there's one update where there's a provision in there that is very similar to the provision we have with Clay County for juvenile detention services. That is basically a payout if we, in the case of the juvenile detention center, if we were kicked out, get a prorated basically portion of our financial contribution back, and there's a provision there that if we would get that amount if a state statute change necessitated that split. They just asked for the same mirror language if there were a change in statutory language that created a similar situation for Minnesota entities. And so that, I think, has already been added. And that was when Steve called me, and that was the one comment he had. I think we both sort of were smiling by the end of that conversation. That was a pretty easy conversation.
Great. So with that, it's discussion, presentation only. You've got some opportunity to take a look at this in detail. What I'd like to see is any comments that you've got on the agreement, questions, corrections, whatever, get those back to Robert ASAP so we can take some action on this at the next meeting. Commissioner Peterson.
To our friends in Minnesota, obviously, thank you for the relationship we've had in the past. Not that you can speak for Mayor Carlson and the teams in the city of Moorhead, but I'd like you to speak for the mayor. Presumably, you've had that discussion, and I've not talked to her specifically about this. I'm presuming Moorhead's content with what you guys have as a relationship across the river as well, regarding this matter, yeah? How about I withdraw the question?
I got a different way to direct it.
Yeah.
Mr. Wilson's had an awful lot of discussions with Molly.
That's a better way, yeah. So, in long story short, I want to make sure that everybody across the river is happy, as well as our friends, adjacent to us or around this area are happy too. So, and again, I've just not talked to anybody.
Okay.
Thank you for that question, Commissioner
Sorry.
Peterson. Yes, we have been in a lot of conversations with the Moorhead mayor and the people that she's asked to be part of this discussion. The one area that they would like to see a change in at some point in time is the financial makeup that's within the JPA. They would like to be able to pay their money to Clay County as opposed to Cass County.
Oh,
And our position at Clay County is, as soon as we can work out the appropriate MOU with them, we'll gladly do that. That has not been done yet. And so the current language in the JPA still shows Moorhead as a financial obligator to the operations. And what we have told Moorhead, and what I've talked with the mayor about, is that we would be more than willing to come back. We don't want that to hold up this JPA getting done. I think, Rick, we've had a lot of conversations about that. And so we're here to support the current draft, but we've also told the city of Moorhead that we're more than willing to work on their request. And that would then take a later amendment to the JPA, which, in talking with Commissioner Peters and Commissioner Steen and Commissioner Sherling, I've been more involved with in that, there certainly is the willingness to do that. So the kind of the ball is going to be in their court, and we have been working on that MOU. So that's also being in place. So, and while I'm up here, I do want to state that that last little thing you talked about, we're very thankful for your involvement with our West Central Regional Juvenile Center as well. Rick's been a really good liaison for the Cass County on there, and he's been instrumental in working out all of our financial deals that go on. And incidentally, the amount of money that Clay County is bringing to the RRDC is the identical amount that Cass County brought to the West Central Regional Juvenile Detention Center.
Amazing how that worked out.
Yeah, and both I think publicly are regarded highly, as Commissioner Sherling, you talked about. This has been a staple. The RRDC has been a staple amongst cooperation between our local governments for many years, and we're here to make sure that that continues. All right, Chad?
yes, sir.
Okay.
Sorry.
Thanks, Kevin. All right, any other questions? If not, we can move on to the next agenda item. All right, thank you, gentlemen, for showing up. Eric, thanks for all your work on this. And hopefully you don't hear much more from us. How's that sound? All right, thanks. All right, we're moving on to now number 4, Casselton Soybean Road Engineer Service Agreement, 4A, I guess.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I've got 3 different Highway Department topics. So the first one, over the last year, we've had some different discussions on the new Cass County Road 30, which is 36th Street on the south side of the ethanol plant leading to the new NDSP facility. NDSP has worked with the Everest Township and is currently constructing that road based on a set of plans and to the standards, to our county standards, so that way we'll be able to take that over. And just for your reference, in the next month, I'll be bringing several different agreements between Everest Township, Casselton Township, and NDSP regarding the transfer of that 36th Street, which will become County Road 30 from the township to the county. And it's a little bit confusing because it is a road that's on a township line. So far, all of those costs for that road improvement and the engineering to get the engineering design were all paid for by NDSP. And then I'll also be bringing an agreement with NDSP for the remaining road work that will occur, which we are currently looking at in 2023 to do the improvements on the east end of 36th Street, and then crossing over the legal drain that's part of Maple River Water Resource District. And then in 2024, coming back and doing a concrete paving project. So those are the two projects that that this agreement with Houston Engineering would be for the engineer services is to complete that. Previously, what's been discussed and what will be in the agreement with NDSP is that there would be a $3 million cap on all construction and engineering services related to this project. And then anything above and beyond that would be paid for by NDSP. And so, and then we also, the North Dakota DOT has allocated one out of our $3 million that we would put forward, that they would reimburse us 50% of that, up to $1.5 million, into our federal aid account. So this is really to get the ball rolling on getting the design so we can get the next summer's project out to bid this winter, and then we'll have, basically they'll roll right from designing next summer's project right into designing the concrete project for 2024, so we can bid that out next fall. And again, I anticipate that no matter what the total cost of the project is, that we'll have the agreement coming in the next month with NDSP saying that our cap on both design and construction of any improvements on this road will be capped at $3 million. And I think we've seen good faith in that. NDSP's already gone out and had Houston design it to our standards. Through that whole process, we reviewed their sets of plans, and then they built it, and we've had some of our staff just double checking along with the survey and inspection staff from Houston that are out there inspecting the road that's getting built right now.
Any questions for Jason? I have just one item. It's a picky little item on page, and I maybe I don't understand this. Last page of the contract. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, it's probably not KLJ, is it?
okay, thank you. Sometimes, no, we will, and it's on the last page.
Yeah.
Of the actual contract, yeah. Under signatures, just attested, it's signed by
Thank you.
Mark Anderson.
PDF. page
Okay,
5.
I will
So
make
it's-
that change and get that
deal.
back to you. Thank you. It's,
All right. Commissioner Sherling.
Thank you. I move to authorize the chair to sign purchase order and contract documents with Houston Engineering for engineering services for the detailed design permit applications and construction management of phase 2 and 3 of the project as stated, subject to state's attorney's approval.
Second.
And with the minor change at the, as noted.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Capitan,
Yes.
Commissioner Steen,
Yes.
Commissioner Sherling,
Yes.
Commissioner Brightling,
Yes.
Commissioner Peterson.
Yes.
Motion passes. On to 4B. Excellent news here, Jason, so go ahead.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. So just to tie the bow on the last item, one other item that will come forward too is the agreement with the Water Resource District for the improvements. So that's the other agreement. So again, in the next month, there'll be several different agreements I'll be bringing forward between the townships, the Water Resource District, and NDSP. So, yes, over the last 6 to 9 months, we've been talking about the wild rice slide on Highway 81, south of 88th Avenue on the west side of the road. And as we, last spring, we had a discussion with the flood sales tax. We went and sought funding from the North Dakota State Water Commission and received up to 50%, so roughly $750,000 that they would pay. And then over the summer, we were looking at various options, everything from a very heavy-duty reinforced sheet pile wall that could have been upwards of $2 million. And we were looking at a lower cost being probably in that $700 to $800, maybe $1 million. In the end, once the water went down in the Wild Rice River, we were able to get a better survey of what everything actually is out there. And we pressed our geotechnical firm that was helping with the design, and we were able to come up with a more inexpensive solution, leading to last week's bid results for a total cost for the project of just shy of $320,000. And again, of that, and that's with Northern Improvement. We've already had some discussions, and they're planning to start that if it's approved here, either next week or early the following week. With that, we would send the out at $320,000, half would get paid for by the State Water Commission. We had taken it to the flood sales tax, of which that would be $120,000 for that, and then the county highway department would pick up $30,000, and then $10,000 we would bill to the city of Fargo because of their the discussions that we've had with them based on the infrastructure they have for sanitary sewer there. So I think it's a win-win for everybody, and we can get this fixed. We'll have guardrail up, so it we are reshaping and moving some dirt and putting riprap in. I think we got some decent riprap prices because West Fargo is decommissioning their lagoons, and they've got miles of riprap that used to wrap around the inside of those lagoons to prevent erosion, and so this is one project that, while everything else seems to be going up in cost, we actually were able to get a good price.
So what changed? Can you give me a simple answer on that? Obviously, we go from something to something less. You said it's simply because of the lower water. So what did you see, or what did?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Peterson, so one, on the high end was was the option that had been put out earlier last spring of this more extensive sheet pile wall, which would have gone deeper, and so it would have been almost an I-beam with a sheet pile, and so that would have been very expensive. And so we looked at the slope, angle of the slope, and then cutting it at different angles. And they had made some estimates on how much material was out, and if we had to remove certain material, that it could take weight off and then induce more slumping. And so it really came down to some different discussions with the geotechnical engineering based on what they ultimately saw once the water went down. And because at one point they were also talking that we may have to get some land on the west side of the river and put riprap on that to weight the river down so that it went, because these slide planes and slumping kind of happen in a rotational manner. And so they were thinking we'd have to place a bunch of material to prevent, as a counterweight, to basically prevent that from. So,
Pray for drought, I guess, right?
and right now, it's a great time for us to be out there because I was just out along that river a week and a half ago, and there's not much water. I think 2 24-inch culverts could almost carry the water flowing by there right now. So it'll be a good time to get out and do that.
Excellent. Commissioner Shirley.
So, City of Fargo is only contributing 3% to the repair. Do you think that's reflective of the responsibility? I mean, it's a pretty significant slump there. Do you think that was caused or contributed to by their infrastructure that's running past there?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Sherling, we don't have any indications that there's any leaking or anything like that. There's also a casserole water line in that area. So there's not any indication that would have caused it. And it didn't, that line's been in there for, I think, close to between 15 and 20 years now. So there isn't any indication that it wasn't like there was some recent work that could have caused that.
And then just a follow-up to that, it seems like we're getting more and more of these requests for funding to the flood sales tax committee. Are we out there really looking for these before the highway fails? Just because with this drought, it just seems like it's happening on every corner you look at.
great question, Commissioner. I think, where we can, we try to look in advance and try to get things stopped before they become a bigger issue. We've done some work up, in the past, we had some issues north of the airport along County Road 31, and we had to actually move the road west of the Stockman subdivision. But further north of there, there's a spot that we've done some different maintenance work to make sure that it doesn't aggravate it and get to be worse, especially in areas where a culvert may be causing water to kind of get down and infiltrate and lubricate that slide plane that's going to cause that rotational slide. But, unfortunately, these things.
It'd be great if we could prevent them, or at least get out there and throw something on it to, before it gets worse. And I recognize this is a heavily trafficked area, relatively speaking, and it slid really fast. It was just like overnight, all of a sudden, you can see the Wild Rice River from the road.
And, Mr. Chair, Commissioner, and unfortunately, especially on the Wild Rice and the Red, it can be very unpredictable. And I know not this past summer, but the summer before, we saw that up more in that Halsted area where I want to say it was about a quarter-mile stretch along the Red River. There was a Kevin Walden story on WDY where it just dropped about 30 feet down, and that there was no expectation. So things can be unpredictable, especially in the years where we go from fairly high water last spring to lower water, and I know in past years that's when we could start having problems where that water infiltrates into the bank, kind of saturate it, weights it down, and then when the water in the river goes down, it doesn't have that pressure holding it, so then it can give way. And that's in the past when Fargo used to have to put a levee on 2nd Street by City Hall. That's where they had the time when they could put the clay on the road, because if they put it in too early and the water in the river was down, it would have the whole river bank would have slumped into the river. So they had to wait until the water was up so high, and then they could put the dirt, and then as the water was going down, they had to get the dirt off that road quickly so it didn't.
We got to actually balance the weights out.
Yes,
Really?
yeah.
Okay.
Our ground is squishy.
Yeah. Huh. All right, anything else? Any questions or motion? Commissioner Sherling?
Thank you. I move to authorize the chair to sign purchase order and contract documents with Northern Improvement Company for the slide repair, guardrail, and incidentals on Cass County Highway stated above, which is 81, subject to state's attorney's approval.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Peterson,
Yes.
Commissioner Steen, Commissioner Capitan,
Yes.
Commissioner Sherling,
Yes.
Commissioner Brightling.
Yes.
Passes. With that, Jason must be handing out something for 4C. I'm just guessing.
All right, thank you. So another good news story on funding, and we'll find out the final numbers here in about a month and a half. But in this year's budget for 2020, or for the 2023 budget at the budget hearing, we did budget for admin and engineering costs, road and bridge costs for 52nd Avenue with Fargo and West Fargo. This agreement that I'm asking you to sign is also going to the City of West Fargo and City of Fargo commission meetings. I think both of them have meetings this evening that this agreement will be at. And again, this project will be bid out. A couple things that have changed since July when you approved the my base budget for 2023, and that at that point we weren't expecting to get as much federal funding, so we were looking at a total of $4.1 million, and we were expecting it all to be in 2023. Since July, working with MetroCog and the City of Fargo, we were able to get some additional federal funding, so that brought the overall project, or our cost from 4.1 down to $2.8 million. And so reducing the overall project cost of the county by almost 1.3 million. And then based on some discussions that we've had with the design for the bridge, and because below the bridge is a dam, this area on the Cheyenne River has the water intake for the Fargo water treatment plant so that they can bring water from the Cheyenne River over to the Red River to assist in supplying the water treatment plant in Fargo. Because of that, they expect that to do all the construction is probably going to go over 2 years, so it'll go into 2023 and to 2024. So Fargo said that they're good with us just paying 50% in 2023 and the other 50% in 2024. So right now, instead of what was budgeted, the 4.1 million for 2023, I now expect that our cost for 2023 will be 1.4 million, and then another 1.4 million in 2024. So I think it's a win-win for the county, both in overall costs and then kind of spreading those costs over 2 years instead of all next year.
Mr. Brightling.
Do these costs include any work on the roundabout?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Bradley, yes. So this includes, I don't know, Catlin, do you have the map that was, I had submitted a map as a, yeah, the project includes on the east end, the entrance to Deer Creek, 63rd Street, all the way to the roundabout. So it'll include the bridge and dam structure, of which we're not paying anything on that dam structure. And so there'll be a 4-lane from 63rd all the way to the roundabout, and then the roundabout will be improved with additional legs onto the roundabout so that, for example, if you're coming from the south, from Horace, and you want to go east, there'll be basically a dedicated lane going from the south, turning east into that new 4-lane section of road over the bridge. It's interesting, the bridge is almost as wide as it is long because of just the nature of a 4-lane wide bridge with bike paths and all that.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I have a quick question. At the end of the day, the local share, it looks like we're paying about 6%? 26% of the total. 2.8 over about 11, somewhere in that range, right? Before the federal funding, what was our percentage? Do you have any idea? We captured 9 million of federal funding, and we dropped our bill by 1.4 million, thereabouts. So the other 7.6 million went to Fargo and West Fargo, or how'd that work? You follow my drift?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I believe some of the additional cost ended up going to the city of Fargo because the federal aid, I believe, was more for the road and bridge, and so that brought those costs down, and which we have a larger portion of the bridge.
Picking up the biggest share of.
And right, and Fargo has all of that water intake facility dam structure. Unfortunately, I don't have the.
I mean, that
previous
answers. I mean, if the
breakdown.
majority of the funding went towards the bridge, I get it. If that's what it was.
And that was one thing
specified for.
for our costs. In the end, the total amount that for the road, bridge, and roundabout, each entity is paying a very similar amount, and so that was one thing I felt was appropriate. It's 100% our bridge right now, so we paid a little bit more on the bridge, versus Fargo and West Fargo. The bridge kind of splits between Fargo, West Fargo, Horace. So there's we had some, I think, some really good faith discussions on that evenly split the costs between all those transportation components.
I think we're getting a lot done. I mean, the 2.8 million. I mean, it's getting a lot done. I was just curious how that split happened, so. Any other questions for Jason? Questions or motion?
And Mr. Chair, one last thing too.
Yes,
is
sir.
that, this, at the end of this project, everything, from the roundabout going east will be turned over. So our County Road 6 will end further south, when I first started with the county, 22 years ago, our County Road 6 went from the roundabout all the way to the Red River, including the Red River Bridge. So since then, we've turned over the Red River Bridge to Fargo, and this is the last part of 52nd Avenue to get turned over to Fargo and West Fargo.
I see that. All right. Any other questions or discussion or motion? Mr. Capitan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move to authorize the Commission Chair to sign a memorandum of agreement for 52nd Avenue South with Cass County Government, City of Fargo, and the City of West Fargo.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there discussion on the motion? Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Commissioner Brightling,
Yes.
Commissioner Peterson,
Yes.
Commissioner Steen.
Yes.
Commissioner Capitan,
Yes.
Commissioner Sherling.
Yes.
Motion passes. Thanks, Jason, for going through those three.
Yes.
I know a couple of them are on the consent agenda, but there was so much going on, I just felt it would be good for the commission to hear more details, so thank you.
Absolutely. Anytime. Thank you.
All right, moving on to number 5, Brandy, appraisal of tax forfeited properties.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Under consideration for today is to set the minimum sale price for properties forfeited to the county for non-payment of taxes and to set the hearing date on the minimum sales price for 3:30 p.m. on November 7th, 2022 in the Cass County Commission Room. The suggested minimum sales price is a starting point for the annual auction and is set to the greater of the unpaid taxes, costs against the properties, and an estimate of the 2022 taxes, or 25% of the assessed value. As prescribed by state law, the public auction is set for the third Tuesday in November, which falls on November 15th of 2022. Payments have been coming in steadily, and we're currently down to 31 properties on the sale list. Property owners have been sent 3 notices, one in each of May, July, and September, regarding the outstanding balances and payment options. As well, our finance office has been reaching out to each individual property owner by phone to discuss. The next and final notice before the sale will be sent in November. And a brief overview of some of the properties include 9 vacant lots in Fargo, 5 of which are located on Riverwood Drive adjacent to the Red River. And the city has reached out to the county. I believe that they're going to put forward an effort to obtain these properties and deem them as non-buildable due to setback ordinances. We do have a few properties that have previously been on our list before. We have a bike path in West Fargo, so we're foreseeing that that'll go back to the city of West Fargo. And we also have one property which the owner has applied for home ownership assistance through the North Dakota Human Services. That's a new program that has been offered, so we're awaiting a response on that. A vacant property in Grandin that has water and sewer running to it, but no further development has ensued, as well as a commercial property in Casselton that has 1 building set over 3 separate lots.
Any questions for Brandy? Mr. Wilson?
Are any of them occupied residents?
There are a number of occupied residents, yes. One in particular, I believe, has been on one of our auctions in the past.
Paid up at the last.
Pay their bill or? what was
It has that one has a long history, yep, that we can discuss if you'd like.
We don't need to, no. We've touched base with them and they understand the situation, that's all I want to know. Yep, okay, perfect. All right, any other questions for Brandy or a motion? Commissioner Capitan.
Mr. Chairman, I move to set the minimum rate sales prices as recommended by the county auditor and to set the hearing date on the minimum sale prices for 3:30 p.m. on November 7, 2022 in Cass County Commission Room, parcel 05-0100-01259-000 is subject to being removed should the North Dakota Homeowners Assistance Program require the foreclosure process to be paused.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion on the motion? Any discussion on the motion? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Sherling?
Yes.
Commissioner Brightling?
Yes.
Commissioner Peterson?
Yes.
Commissioner Steen? Commissioner Capitan?
Yes.
Motion passes. On to number 6, State's Attorney salary. Tracy?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the commission. You'll probably remember
You have to
this,
enter-
oh, I'm sorry.
You are at the podium, 'cause they say we need to do that since we're broadcasting, so,
Oh, so stay
yep.
facing this way, okay. You'll probably remember that this is a carryover item from your last meeting. It was brought to you with some numbers that suggested that the state's attorney position could be treated as a promotion to the two people that are up for the position. That dollar figure is in the memo, figured in there, and then some of the commissioners requested some additional information on salaries of state's attorneys across the state of North Dakota. So I included the Burley County, Ward County, Grand Forks County, Stark County, and Williams County. And all of those salaries are contained in Attachment 1. I also calculated what those salaries are projected to be in 2023 based on the cost of living adjustment that has been approved in those counties. So those numbers are in Attachment 1. The next attachment in your agenda packet is a printout from the Association of Counties website, including all of the salaries for the state's attorneys across the state. I just included that for your information. And then the final one is a chart of the current salaries for those two individuals, what their projected salary would be in January 2023, and what that 5% raise would look like, and what grade that would put them in essentially a step 8 at the 004 pay grade. So that's the additional information that was requested, and I would entertain any questions or if there's something else that you would like for information.
Any questions or clarification needed from Tracy? Any questions? Or a motion? Commissioner Capitan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move to authorize the incoming Cass County State's Attorney to be compensated at the grade of 004, step 8, with a salary of $137,692 effective January 1, 2023.
Motion, is there a second? Is there a second? Chair seconds. Any discussion on the motion? Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Steen?
Yes.
Commissioner Capitan?
Yes.
Commissioner Brightling?
Yes.
Commissioner Peterson?
No.
Commissioner Sherling?
Motion passes. Thank you. Moving on to ARPA policy authorization for jail addition. Mr. Wilson, is this the first one we've actually officially done?
It is.
Okay, thank you.
It is. And
I wondered.
I actually caught myself a little bit because in looking at this, we've been so focused on expenditure of funds once we get into building and construction and doing it. And I had admittedly one of those sort of, oh my goodness moments, realizing that engaging the architect to design the building plans is very much appropriating and utilizing funds for the construction. So if I had to do it over again, I would have brought this to you at the same time or before I brought the Klein McCarthy agreement to you that you dealt with at your last meeting. So that's my holding myself accountable there. That being said, here we are. The policy that you approved about a year ago for utilizing ARPA funds includes having this worksheet that starts on page 4 of the packet, completed with the really the narrative of why we believe this project fits within the guidelines. And again, this is not anything that was an off-the-cuff interpretation or something that was entered into lightly. It was something that we first talked about with Mr. Montplaisir prior to Ms. Madriga coming on board. We had this conversation with some of the NACO staff at previous national conferences who really were at the table with U.S. Treasury folks as they were first writing the interim final rules and then writing the final rules. And so it was really just a point of making sure we follow our own policy and follow through on what we said we were going to do. So we've really laid out that, and really it also gives us a nice narrative of what we're doing in relation to and in the spirit of the ARPA legislation. So we've got general project background, impact of COVID-19, intended result, solution cost, time frame, and then the parameters of really why we believe this is an eligible project within the final rules. I will tell you that I have reached out to our main authority and go-to person at NACO just to see if it's really necessary to have this level of detail and quoting from the final rule within this policy, or within this statement. I don't believe it hurts anything, but it was a curiosity that I had as I was putting this together of do I need this level of detail? But looking for as I scroll back up to my memo here, really looking for a motion to authorize an expenditure of Cass County ARPA funds for architectural design and construction management services for the Cass County Jail Housing Addition, as described in the agreement with Klein McCarthy Architects, to follow through on what we laid out in our county policy for expending ARPA funds.
So move.
Motion, is there a second?
Second.
Discussion on the motion. Commissioner Peterson, thank
Thank
you.
you. And the level of detail is not needed, but I don't think it's now that we've got everything set up, I think it's good to have. Should someone need to look at this in the future, no one, based on the conversations you and I have had with our peers, no one's doing this. So regardless, doesn't make it wrong. It just ensures that we are more right than our peers. Thank you.
And Commissioner Peterson, you've had a chance, I know, to meet with the architects and all that type of thing. How's that going? Just curious. It kind of relates to the motion, but I'm just.
So I think it's great. I mean, obviously we were not blessed with 700 submittals, but the reality is we've got a good designer, and they're appearing to be aggressive in terms of design and timeline right now, which is what they should be to get us in, early next end of winter, early spring. So I'm content with progress. I think the learning curve, the one negative about not hiring a firm, regardless of whether it's a garage at your house or, a skyscraper in downtown Fargo, the learning curve of another firm taking over can be substantive. So I think having this firm engaged from the start is a benefit, and I think they're able to more further expedite because of that. So I think it's fine. And they're good to work with. I mean, obviously we wouldn't have hired them again if they weren't. I think.
I respect your opinion on this, trust me. So, any other questions on the motion? Other questions? Roll call.
Commissioner Capitan?
Yes.
Commissioner Peterson?
Yes.
Commissioner Steen?
Yes.
Commissioner Sherling?
Yes.
Commissioner Brightling?
Yes.
Passes. We don't really have other business. I just had a question, though. I felt it was asked here better than anywhere else. Where are we at with the school that needs to be taken down?
I can give an update on that one. We did working with Mr. Gartner, building and grounds supervisor, contracted with a firm here in town that really specializes in asbestos-related remediation and demolition. And part of that is understanding all of the permitting needs and what has to be done to lawfully take down a building or decontaminate a building. And there was a line in there that said and assist with procuring or contracting with a contractor. It did not say that this remediation specialist was going to reach out and contract with somebody. And so that person, that firm did ultimately call a couple of demolition contractors, and based on a couple of reach outs, offered the job.
Offered the job.
I would say obtained quotes is that is a much better term to use. Obtained quotes. In conversations with Mr. Burdick and Ms. Peters in her final days up in the state's attorney's office, we really looked at the amounts that were submitted in those quotes and the process that was utilized probably were not ideally suited to procurement statutes. So we are going to have the information. Ms. Peters is working to make sure we have that we control the procurement process, and we're going to put it out for RFP, look to get bids back quickly, but then have the work accomplished in the spring.
These quote requests are going to more than just the ones that were previously sent to?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Yes, indeed. I was, I went back when we realized where we were at. I went back and was looking over the scope of work for this remediation firm and say, did I miss something? And they, didn't catch something. They, it wasn't 100% clear of what they committed to do, and they went a little beyond that, and so we elected to better be safe than sorry.
All right, with that, on to number 8, approve vouchers.
I've had
Commissioner Breitling.
I've had an opportunity to review the 37 pages of bills this month, or this section, but in any event, there is an item on page 30 that I want to draw your attention to, and that's a $20,000 payment to Hunter Township. And I visited with Sarah about this, and what this is 2020 flood damages that we were holding funds from FEMA to pay Hunter Township once they provided us with documentation of their expenses. And they've finally done so. So that's why it appears to be a goofy little entry there. And I wanted, in case others look at that list of expenses, I wanted to explain that one item.
I was under the impression townships always needed money. But I guess not.
They are, they just don't want to gather the receipts and turn them in.
That whole thing. That's a real deal.
Move to approve the bills as presented.
Second. I mean, they don't get paid for it either, so.
Any discussion on the motion? Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Breitling?
Yes.
Commissioner Peterson?
Yes.
Commissioner Steen?
Yes.
Commissioner Capitan?
Yes.
Commissioner Sherling?
Motion passes. On to committee reports. Mr. Wilson.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, only 3 reports tonight. At this point, or as the Fargo City Commission meeting gets underway at 5:30 this evening, I think they will be deliberating and talking about the bylaws, recommended bylaw changes that are being recommended for the Board of Public Health. That's something that I think a couple of you have been contacted regarding, and so I don't know if that's essentially a first reading or just an informational session, but I know they are at least beginning that discussion tonight, and that is something that I think, again, wanted to bring to your attention because I think a couple of you have heard about
I'm
that.
going to ask a question on that to you and or Mr. Breitling. Anything in the suggested bylaw changes that we should be aware of? There were some controversial discussions early on.
My concerns are more with the legality of what we're doing, based on the statutes. If you look at all the documents, the original contract for services went into effect in the mid-'70s. In 1991, the statute got changed so that it requires all the property within a county to be in a district. Well, I don't think the city of Fargo had the ability to include all of the county in the district that they formed. And I don't think we have one in the county, and I'm not sure that under those circumstances, we have the ability to contract out by avoiding that statute.
That was the question earlier too.
Yeah, and those are the questions that I posed to the state's attorney. There's one other question. They seem to recite in those agreements that sections 544001 or 08 simply authorize this agreement. And when I look at them, I disagree with that dramatically, but I think the state's attorney has to look at that as well, because we don't want to rely on my unlicensed report.
There was also some discussion with regard to the makeup of the board.
Well, yeah, it's the statute process originally did not included, our contractual agreement included services for all of West Fargo. Later on, that became kind of split, but I don't know how in the world they did that, but, and I haven't asked anyone, and no one has provided me with any information. But in addition, somewhere in those statutes, and I haven't seen the session laws which provide that if your city gets over 15,000, then it's different. That's treated differently. And the composition of the board is treated differently. So if we have to have a board that's treated differently than their board, then it seems to me that my thought process is what we're looking at is appropriately a joint powers agreement. The contracts presently also provide that either party can get out of the contract with a 90-day notice, which is a little weird to me, but because that's not something that I would want to hustle out of if we're providing these healthcare services to the rural community. It's until I get some feedback on some of the questions I have, I can't give you a definitive answer, but they talk about not less than 5 members, but then they go on to talk about in the statute what's required outside of that.
So the minimum's 5, plus there might be some additional requirements.
Right.
Thank you, Mr.
And at least that's how I read those statutes to date.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think this can get incredibly muddy and incredibly complex. Some time ago, Mr. Wilson, I, and Desi sat down regarding, and this was after West Fargo pulled their resources, and I can't tell you how many years ago it was. It was
I think
pre-COVID.
Yeah, I think they pulled them before they got to 15,000.
Yeah, so I think Mr. Burdick's interpretation of what is transpiring in regard to this proposal, well, the revised services contract, or MOU, whatever you want to call it, will be important, but I think it might be time for us to do exactly what Commissioner Brightly is hinting at, to educate ourselves as to what this thing really is or what it could be, and if we've been doing it properly. And again, it's not to be critical of our friends established. It was established with the best of intentions years ago, amended accordingly as they saw fit in the 90s, but that may or may not have been, I don't want to say legal, that's not right, the best way to do it, but they just got it done. Because Fargo was the metro, West Fargo was tiny, no one anticipated the growth, no one anticipated Horace exploding the way they have. So now it may be time to rethink how we're doing things and to make sure that the burden of what this is is spread more equally amongst all constituents countywide. Because I think if we do that, the light bulb will click on to how much Fargo's been subsidizing this for everyone else. And I think that's where the dynamic discussions will have to transpire.
More specifically, Commissioner Breitling, there was discussion about eliminating a couple of positions on the board. One was the rural, one was West Fargo.
Yes.
At one point. You know where that's at?
My understanding, and this is feedback from the mayor, is that they're going to be visiting about it tonight. It came off the consent agenda and is going on the regular agenda for discussion purposes only.
Mayor Mahoney, sir, or Mayor Bernardus?
Mahoney.
Okay, thank you.
At least that's what he told me following the Board of Health meeting last Friday.
This
And
was on the consent agenda.
It was, but he said that he was going to have it taken off the consent agenda so that they could start visiting thoroughly about it at tonight's meeting. Now, that doesn't mean that's going to happen, but because he has to have agreement with the rest of the commissioners to do so, I would think.
Sure.
Commissioner Peterson.
Yeah, real quick. I think that if anyone starts looking into this, they're going to discover how dynamic the situation is. Trust me, no one understands. I would contend that between Desi, Mr. Wilson, and me a little bit, we know far more about how this thing could or should be structured than anyone else in this area. Certainly Desi knows better. But we spent time on this before and chose to not do anything because it just wasn't the right thing to do. But I think everyone getting educated is a good thing.
All right. Did you have something to add, Mr. Wilson?
I believe the one proposal that may be considered is looking at an advisory board makeup that includes a representative of the city of Fargo, from Cass County, from West Fargo, and 4 at-large members.
4 at large.
Yeah. And again, don't know if that's where
So there's one requirement currently for one other rural, right? And then at large.
I can't tell you what the board makeup is currently.
That's unclear.
Some of that Cass County appoints, I think.
Well, yes,
Yep.
that we've appointed a rural member, Cass County has, but I'm not sure that there's any statutory authority for doing so.
I was just in the agreement, basically.
Well, I'm not.
I think my understanding is that, again, certainly not a lawyer, but the position of the city of Fargo is that because they are a home rule city, similar to us as a home rule county having additional powers that a non-home rule county does not have, that they believe as a home rule city, they have additional powers that non-home rule cities do not. And that allows them the latitude to act as they have in this case. I couldn't
It seems
begin
like an interesting topic to go to battle over, but okay.
It's very dynamic. We just need to learn.
I don't know if it's really a battle as it really
There's
is
some issues.
achieving some understanding of what is required and what we're doing.
I think when it comes to board members, that might be a fight. But I do think broad education is a good thing.
So the question to your point, Commissioner Peterson, is if Fargo is paying the bulk of this, then can we just say that Fargo taxpayers are subsidizing everyone else, and in exchange, City of Fargo is appointing a board and in charge of the budget?
Interesting.
Because, I mean,
You
know,
could imply,
when we
yeah.
looked at our dispatch center or any of these, and so I keep reminding people, we are sitting in the city of Fargo. So are you paying more and because you're sitting here in Fargo than I am, who's not sitting in Fargo, except for right now. I don't live in Fargo. I think there's a lot of questions and we don't have any answers.
Yes, ma'am.
But other than that, I have no report other than the usual plethora of meetings coming up.
Mr. Breitling as well. No report.
State's Attorney's Office, anything to report?
No, sir.
Capitan.
Nothing other than it was brought up, under the NACO Veterans and Military Affairs, as we're having this green light, Operation Green Light, should be purple light because it's not only Army, but there's Air Force and Navy in there too. But it's much like
We have a bias there.
law enforcement blue light. Now we have Operation Green Light, and we're hoping that everybody will submit and start hanging green lights in their porches now.
I don't mean to go backwards, but there, amongst the various agreements that I've seen existing, the Board of Health has always contracted with the jail for the medical services. And I'm questioning the authority that the jail people have the ability to contract with.
Contracts through the county.
Well,
Yeah.
there have been separate agreements with the jail, period.
But it's approved through us, sir.
Well, it has to be, it somehow
We
has to have
approve
been.
that.
It's even a separate line discussion within our, not lines the wrong way, a separate topic within our budget.
And at one time, they also contracted with Cass County Social Service Board.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yep.
it's, if you look at all the instruments, it's confusing.
I think it was done with the best, and I'm being sincere, it was done with the best of intentions years ago when it was set up.
I'm sure.
It's just grown, we've all grown to the point where, much like our dispatch center, we may find, once we investigate this and we understand what it is, we may find the structure of it may be done better a different way. Although Commissioner Sherling's point was interesting
Yeah.
in that, there you go, give them, yeah, great. You got the board members, cool. It's your bill, rock on.
You're absolutely right.
Capitan, you were done? Mr. Peterson.
Thank you. Obviously, we were all attending similar meetings. The one thing I do want to mention is during my county tour, county tours, plural, we hit a bunch of different courthouses. One of the things we discussed was, should the association take a position on term limits? And interestingly enough, we were contacted during one of the rides from a number of people at League of Cities. It turns out there's 17 other groups, whether it's Farmers Union, League of Cities, that are all taking positions on term limits. So we may find that we are going to take a position on term limits, which is against term limits, which shouldn't shock anybody here. But we'll see. That's not been formally discussed as of yet. Meetings coming up. Groundbreaking with the Grand Farm. How many people are going to the Grand Farm groundbreaking? Commissioner Skeen?
I have a Fargo Dome building committee meeting.
Okay. Taylor, you might want to notice just in case,
Know
please.
when it is?
I've got it.
When is that?
Robert has it for you.
You'll post
Wednesday
that,
morning at 10:30, just in case.
Yeah.
And then we have rural action on Thursday. Otherwise, yeah, I mean, same meetings we've all been at, so that's it, sir.
Thank you.
Well, you're really welcome getting you out here before 6. So.
That's amazing. So I can pick up my children.
Yep.
Yay. Children are good.
Yeah. Thank you. Yes, I would like to utilize Robert to unveil our new Cass County election representative shirt. They came in last week, and this is a shirt that any of our county staff will wear as they're attending any of the election.
Are they all the same
venues.
color?
They're all the gray. I got a few white ones.
I'm just curious.
A few white ones. But yes, they're all the same color.
Any double extra large?
Well, I think they actually came up into the triple extra large even. So, and on top of these shirts here as a coordinated effort, just so that staff can be identified, we've moved forward with having election worker vests. So it'll identify election workers and inspectors as well for visualization when you come to any of the vote centers. We have feather flags. So I've allocated 2 big feather flags, big ones that kind of shake out in the wind right at the entryway for the boat center.
If you're away for the community corner at the
And-
West Acres Mall?
Yeah, so
Wacky inflatable tube guy.
So for the mall, yeah, I know that's for the next one, yes. For the mall in particular, I got some A-frames that we can put throughout the center of the court. So if you happen to not go into one of the two entryways for the mall, and go into the other ones, we can direct you to the appropriate place.
Yeah, well, I would just ask one thing, because I got so much feedback on this last year, I couldn't believe it. When we put it in the paper about the community, can you say southeast corner?
Yes, I did. I took that advice because apparently nobody really pays much attention to the
What's in the
baseball
mall?
museum.
No, they don't.
So we actually put
Especially now with 62.
Yeah, we put the south entrance at the transit hub for that one, and then for election day, we're also in that court area, no longer center court. The mall moved us over to in front of Best Buy, which I think is actually going to be much nicer, and that is at the entryway, the north side of that entryway. So people will be able to enter in through both sides. They'll be able to see through the corridor, the lineups at both venues, go to the least busy one.
So be in the corridor by Best Buy?
Yeah, and right in front of Best Buy, and there's a Crave restaurant, a nail salon on the other side. And you go
Actually,
around.
it's a bar, isn't it?
It may be. I have not attended. It's a very nice restaurant. And bar, probably, but we will see how election night goes, and maybe I'll go test it out.
She'll still be here at Head County, so.
That's true.
Hey, a question for you, if you could bring the group up to speed on the status of the Attorney General's, our request to the Attorney General to provide an opinion.
Yes, so the status update is that there is no status update as far as the Attorney General opinion. So we continue to wait, but in anticipation of that direction, we're just gonna have to move forward with our training and as far as our election staff, instructing them to continue to take a voter's word based on their citizenship. There are two questions that we ask every single voter that comes in. One, are you a U.S. citizen? And two, have you been in your residence for 30 days? And that will continue to be two of the questions.
So I still have a question, and I'm not an attorney, but I'm required to show my license, as everybody else. And if it actually says on their non-citizen, there's another option, right? To basically send them home with a provisional ballot, and they can come with other information and bring that ballot back, correct? I mean, that's an option.
Well, in state law, it specifically lays out the exact sort of supplemental documentation and identification that you're, I guess, specified that you can ask for. So we say, well, that's what we're allowed to ask for. It leaves out anything that would identify citizenship. So that is where we're apprehensive to do the supplemental or the set-aside ballot and then have them come back to show that documentation, because in state law, they don't have to. They're allowed to ask for state IDs, whether it's a driver's or a non-driver's, long-term care facility, tribal card, or a number of supplemental documents that can be added on to the state-issued identification, but nothing as far as citizenship status.
And we can't get an opinion on that, if you're so clear on it?
Mr. Burdick has been trying our friends over in the state. They have been asking for updates on that. I'm not sure what else we can do.
So if you don't have a driver's license, what else can you show to prove you are a resident?
You have your non-driver's ID, you have your long-term care facility certificate as well. There's a tribal ID that you can use. And then if let's say that your address isn't completely updated, there's a number of supplemental documents, but that's in addition to those specified ones.
My mother-in-law is 96, she doesn't have a driver's license, she don't have a state ID, and she's certainly not on, well, she does live on a reservation, but she's not Native American.
I believe also that the Department of Transportation offers easy access and free access to a non-driver's ID.
All right. Anything else?
That's all.
All right.
Thank
And
you,
I don't have
Mr.
much
Wilson.
updates other than the meetings. I was invited to the chamber event tomorrow for their chamber annual celebration meeting. So we'll be going to that tomorrow, and then on Wednesday, I may or may not end up at the Grand Farm groundbreaking. Hopefully I can make it there, but I gotta figure out what's going on with the Fargo Dome Building Committee. So that's all I have. Mr. Wilson?
One other item I wanted to give you an update on. Commissioner Sherling passed this my way about a month or so ago. The YMCA is doing a couple of meetings under the title of Adulting 101. And one of them was basically a show and tell all about counties, and that is tomorrow night. And so I've been working with Catlin and the finance office to put together the PowerPoint, and so it should be a fun deal tomorrow night, 6:30.
Audience is.
It is YMCA audience. It was a adult group.
Adults? Okay.
I believe it is. I'll go back and double check that. I've been going under the impression that it is. But it's pretty.
Talking taxation to 4-year-olds.
It's very much what we talked about earlier today, just kind of counties 101. This is what we are, who we are, what we are, what we do, and how we do it.
I think City of Fargo was also going to be.
Yes. Yes.
Right. Anything else? Okay, then we're on to correspondence.
No correspondence.
Motion to adjourn.
We are
Second.
adjourned. Thank you. Thanks, everybody.